Welcome to the Senate's Agriculture Committee meeting. We have 8 bills to take up this morning. But before we get started, we have a special guest. We have Steve Childs, who's the New York State Maple Specialist from Cornell Cooperative Extension. We're certainly glad to have you here today to hear all the exciting things you're doing. I know whether I'm in my district or meeting with maple producers somewhere else in the state, I hear all kinds of wonderful things about what comes out of your research. So I want to say thank you for that. And I just want to acknowledge that Dwayne Hill is here from New York State Maple Producers Association, and he operates Shaver Hill Maple Farm in Center Sewage District. So with that, Steve, we'll turn it over to you and look forward to hearing all the wonderful things you have to say this morning.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Steve Childs, and I am the Maple Specialist for New York State. I also have a coworker who works out of Lake Placid, Mike Farrell, and he also works with research and extension. And my job is to oversee and push for the quality improvement and productivity improvement of maple in New York State. And so I brought along just a couple little illustrations, and I have some things for you that you can look at your leisure. But the first two I brought are just a couple of pieces of tubing. And this is the part that goes in the tree, if you're not familiar with that. And then this drops down and it hooks to other lines that gradually take us back to the sugar house. But the research that we have done over the last few years has shown that if we will keep this part and this drop line completely sanitary, we can produce twice as much sap from the tree. And so for many years, people would just unhook this from the tree, rinse it, put it in a holder, and then come back the next year and put it on. It was cleaned in a sense, but it wasn't totally sanitary. And if it's totally sanitary, the sap continues to run and run and run. And a more recent discovery is that if we use the small tubing, it'll actually develop its own vacuum, because the liquid adheres to the line, the weight of that liquid then pulls on the tap. I have some experiments going this year that are quite simple, where I just have these tapped in the tree about 6 feet high, runs down to a bucket, and compared that to this tube running down to the bucket at the tree. Now that's not what commercial people are necessarily looking for, buckets around the trees, but a lot of New York State does this in their backyards and so on too. And this line is outproducing this line by 48%, just on 6 foot of drop. Where I put these on a 30 or more foot of drop, I can get more out of the spout for vacuum than I can get from any pump that I know is available. I get 28 inches of vacuum at the top of the line. So those are a couple of things that are really quite revolutionary to the maple world. We can also put a check valve here. We can put a spout here that has embedded silver like they do in the medical industry. All of those have that very positive effect. And now, in just the last 2 years, we've discovered that if we wash these with proper contact time with a sanitizer, we can actually wash these lines and get them to act just like new and produce that extra sap. So that's a little bit of a story on those. I also brought along, and feel free to pass this. This is the book that we put together to instruct New Yorkers in how to put together, size, and manage a maple tubing system to the best of your knowledge. So you feel free to leaf through that if you like. One of the other things that really has made a difference in the maple industry, especially for people who are fairly new, is the diabetic meter. And we use the diabetic meter to test syrup, because not all syrups are created equal. There's a mix of sugars in syrup, and if that mix is not right, you cannot make candy, you cannot make cream, you cannot make sugar with it. And so people who want to make value-added products, they can simply use a diabetic meter. We worked that out with the Food Venture Center of Cornell. And this book gives you all the details on how to interpret this data and make it into useful products that are higher quality. And I would have to say, I judged at the New York State Fair, and when I first started, judging was fairly easy. There were just a couple people who were making top quality creams and candies, and now it's a toss-up. I tell the people who win the ribbons, don't be too proud, you weren't that much better than the rest. Just one of the other books that, if you have interest, is Selling Maple Syrup Wholesale and all the situations and regulations and so on. Because if you're selling maple syrup in New York State, it's a fairly unregulated industry. If you sell through Wegmans or Tops or some of those, you all of a sudden enter their world, and you have to meet another whole level of things. So that has been put together for that group of people. And just another quick little thing here. This is a mold that we would make maple candy in. And for many years, and even now, people would fill these one at a time by hand, and then when you're done, you individually push those out. And we've been working with what we call the Maple Candy Improvement and Efficiency Improvement Program, where now we have machinery that can fill 4 of these at a time and do that, making candy that has no off-color white spots. And when you're done, one of our coolest little inventions is just you lay this on a set of rails, you run a rolling pin over it, and you can empty this mold in 3 seconds instead of 30. So just little things that we work on to try to improve how things go. We also try to promote the use of maple in many ways, because as this industry has expanded, it's actually twice the size now that it was just 10 years ago in New York State. And we want to make sure that we keep ahead of that productivity. So we try to make people realize there are many, many ways to use maple syrup. It can be used any way that white sugar is used, only it has the antioxidants, it has a little bit of minerals, maybe even a little bit of vitamin there, but we want them to use it and use it and use it and use it so that we don't get productivity ahead of the market. And then finally, do I need to be louder? One of the big projects we've been working on for the last 3 years is develop curriculum for elementary age kids that we do in cooperation with Ag in the Classroom. So we put together 20 worksheets for each grade, a 5-minute video for each grade, a general video that walks them through how syrup is made that's about 15 minutes long. The others are about 5. They get a smart board program, and they get 2 whole classroom activities. And that's nearing finish. We plan to finish all of that in 2016. And funding that has come through from funding for the State Association and for the Cornell program has helped bring that along quickly. And we're very excited that that's available. The whole intent is to get a classroom to talk about maple, simply because you do a worksheet on math or in history or in science that brings the subject of maple up. And you feel free to look at those. And so that's what I wanted to tell you about today. And if there's any questions, yes.
So our maple production statewide has doubled in the last 10 years?
Yes.
And so is that a product of there are more markets out there for it? I mean, are we trying to use it as a replacement for white sugar in various areas? Or?
I think there's several reasons for it. One is the desire for natural foods has been exploding, and maple fits that. It's also the interest in local foods. Maple is generally considered a very local food. It's a sugar, it's a sweetener, it comes right from the woods near your house. So it's local. Pricing has been good, but also technology, how to use vacuum, how to use sanitary tubing, how to use reverse osmosis and energy saving. All of those things have made it a profitable enterprise. Whereas in the old days, people joked about how much you spend to be a maple producer, and now people can make money doing maple production.
Well, what you showed us today with the tubing, that's something that seems like it would encourage more people to try it, because just being able to use that versus
To get twice as
buying
much.
something that's going to be more expensive to try it out the first year would be a great way to encourage people to tap the trees in their own yard. Can you tell us how the weather's factored in this year as far as the sugaring season?
This year has been a difficult year because it was warm very early, and many maple producers are a little reluctant to go out and get things done too early, because you may just get 6 or 8 weeks of winter after you thought you were going to have a season. Well, we never did get the winter. So those who went ahead and tapped early have made out pretty well. Some who've waited maybe a little too long, it may be a short season for them. I think Central and Western New York may end up a little on the short side, depending on when they would tap. North Country is going great gangbusters, so they may make up for the rest of us. You never know until it's over. No predictions in maple, because you're bound to be absolutely wrong.
So I'm always kidding that we have so much potential and we're number 2 after Vermont, and I want to make sure we're number 1. So tell us how we get there.
We have more woods than Vermont.
We're a lot bigger than Vermont.
We're a lot bigger than Vermont. It's just a matter of our growth has to outpace theirs. But I have to tell you, Vermont is growing as fast as we are. So they're still outpacing us.
How much does an average maple tree produce? I mean, one tree per year
Somewhere between a quart and a half a gallon of syrup per tap.
per tap. One tap per tree or multiple taps per tree?
Bigger trees can have multiple taps.
Anybody else have any other questions for Steve?
Can you tell us about Maple Weekend?
Maple Weekend is this coming weekend, and then there are many sugar houses in New York State that are open to the public, and they will be having demonstrations and various entertainments available for families to go. It's a free event, and you can also pick up your 3 months supply of maple products while you're there.
Anyone have any other questions? Steve, I just want to say thanks
thank
for
you very
coming.
much.
We appreciate the great work that you do, and your name comes up every time I stop at a maple producer, and they are so thankful for all that you're doing to help them continue to grow their business. So,
Well, I'll have to
wanna
tell
say
you,
thank
in return, the funding that you've provided the last 2 years has totally revolutionized my situation. I was operating on 100% grants. When you operate on 100% grants, there's a certain core program that you cannot do because you are totally committed to the people who have offered to pay you money. By you coming alongside of me, you have taken a great deal of pressure off. I don't waste near as much time trying to meet the obligations of many different grants, and we're able to be much more effective.
Well, and I'm sure that the members of the committee are glad to hear that. And I can tell you there's been a lot of support for the Maple funding, and I'm sure that we'll all continue to do what we can to make sure it's there.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Steve.